So welcome to the Asthma Smart Clubs presentation. This is an initiative of Clubs Tasmania and Asthma Australia that Tom and I cooked up about a year ago to try and get some more asthma awareness in clubs that are dealing with people who have got asthma. We know that there are a lot of people in the community that have asthma that either don't play sport because they've got asthma, or when they do, that think they can run into trouble and maybe people don't know what to do to help them out. So we've put together this prezzo to educate you a bit about asthma, but also asthma in sport in particular. Before I go further, I'd like to acknowledge the Palawa people as the traditional owners of the lands that we're on. Specifically here in Round Hobart, the Muwinina people who didn't survive colonisation. I want to pay my respect to elders past and present. So today what we'll go through is how asthma works, so that you understand what's happening to the body of a person with asthma. Does anyone here have asthma? Two of you? Yeah, so we'll go through, you'll know what it feels like, but I'll certainly help you understand what's actually happening in your body, and then the role the medications play, and how asthma sort of plays out in terms of triggers and sports role in asthma. And then we'll go through asthma first aid, just so that you know some principles in case you get someone who's having an asthma flare-up and you need to do some first aid. So just a little bit about Asthma Australia. Asthma Australia is a national organisation, and there used to be asthma foundations in every state. You probably remember the Asthma Foundation of Tassie. They all joined together to form a group about 6 years ago called Asthma Australia, and here in Tassie we joined the national group about 4 years ago. So it was just a little bit before I started with the organisation. So we've been supporting, we're bringing together a 50-year history of helping support people with asthma in the national organisation. So in Australia, about 1 in 9 people has asthma, so that's 2 and a bit million. And here in Tassie, so roughly 11% of people in the country have asthma, and here in Tassie it's 12.9. It's actually, I think it's down to 12.7 at the moment, but that's not much of a decrease. But so there's a good portion of the population here in Tassie. 66,000, I think the very latest figure which came out last week is about 71,000 people with asthma in Tasmania. So it's quite high, and there's about 1,000 people who go to hospital every year to do with an asthma flare-up. That'd be adults or children. And most of the communities across Tasmania have higher than the national prevalence of asthma. So here in Tassie, the community with the highest level of asthma is Bridgewater, or the Brighton local government area, but it's concentrated around Bridgewater. And up on the northwest coast, around Burnie's got the highest incidences of children with asthma that end up going to hospital. So that's a hot spot up on the northwest coast. So it's the 4th highest chronic disease in Tasmania. That's higher than cancer, higher than diabetes, higher than stroke, higher than heart disease. So you all know about those diseases. They've got very high profile. Asthma's higher than all of them. So we've got a lot of work to do to raise the profile of asthma, and hence something like this Asthma Smart Clubs initiative is to get more people thinking about it. So let me unpack asthma for you. So you all probably know that asthma occurs in the lungs, but it actually occurs all the way through the airway system. So through the mouth, down through the airways in the throat, and right down into the lungs. And it goes right through the airways, which they look like a tree with branches that go out smaller and smaller and smaller, and the fronds out to the end. Those are all the airways, and when you get asthma, it affects all of those airways.
A normal airway has bands of smooth muscle around the outside, a healthy pink lining on the inside, with a thin layer of mucus that helps to protect the airway. The thin layer of mucus in the airway creates a slippery environment to clear away foreign particles and irritants. Air is easily able to travel through the airway passage. People with asthma have sensitive airways. They react to triggers, which may cause their asthma to flare up. If a sensitive airway reacts to a trigger, changes can take place that narrow the airway opening. The airway becomes inflamed. The walls of the airway become red and swollen. The airway may also produce excess mucus. This causes the airway to narrow further, reducing the space inside the airway through which air can travel. The muscle bands around the airway may also tighten, reducing the size of the airway even further. Any one of these three changes that occur with an asthma attack, airway inflammation, excess mucus production, and muscle tightening, can make it difficult to move air both into and out of the lungs. A person with one or more of these changes in their airways may experience the signs and symptoms of asthma.
So you've talked about the cough. You've probably heard about wheeze. You don't always get wheeze with asthma, but it's there a bit. Tightness of the chest and obviously shortness of breath. But all those symptoms, they look pretty similar to what else? Common cold, virus, heart. Do you know?
Anxiety.
That's right.
Anxiety.
Yeah.
I need an asthma puffer, but
Yeah.
not always the case.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of times when people present to hospital with an asthma flare-up, they're told that it's anxiety. So it's really important to get health professionals educated around how asthma can present, because it's different for everyone. No two asthmatics is the same. You know, the common factor is that you can't breathe, but everyone experiences asthma a little differently. So obviously when you can't breathe, it's difficult to talk, and a lot of people will try and rush out the words in a few little sentences, and so they start talking really puffy and really rapid, trying to get the words across. For really young children, they'll talk about having a sore tummy because they're feeling anxious and pain in their abdomen, and it feels to them like it's in their tummy. Obviously you're going to get crotchety and moody, and your behaviour will change, and a lot of people will start doing this, because it's this feeling that you want to open up your throat and your airways to try and get air in, so people will start tugging. And obviously pale and sweaty and blue lips is obviously when you really need to call an ambulance if there's any blueness involved. So this is a short list of things that can cause asthma. Anything that you can breathe in is potentially a trigger, and everyone's triggers are unique to them. Some people might have a reaction to deodorants, but they'll be fine with pollen. You know, you never know. But these are the common ones. So anything you can breathe in. The two exceptions to that are emotions, so stress can cause asthma, and exercise. Those are the two things that aren't things that you breathe in that can cause asthma, emotions and exercise. So there is such a thing as exercise-induced asthma. So you might find that people will start to play and then asthma will flare up as they're playing, and we'll talk a bit more about that. But getting stressed is definitely an asthma trigger. And because it's almost like it belongs in the family of allergies. So hay fever allergies and anaphylactic reactions are in the same family as asthma. So let me talk about the medications. So there are two types. We all know the blue puffer, that's a reliever. So like the name suggests, it gives you relief. It'll work in a couple of minutes, and what it'll do is it'll treat that muscle tightening to help that airway expand, and it'll go some way to reducing the swelling and the mucus. So that's designed to take when you're having symptoms to give you relief. The others that you can get, the containers look the same but they're different colours, are preventers. So preventers you take even when you're well to keep that lining of the airway nice and calm, so it desensitises the lining a little bit. And that can take several weeks to condition your airways. So a preventer is not going to help you in a crisis situation when you need to give someone medication, because it doesn't have that immediate effect. And a lot of people get the two mixed up, and they'll be sucking away on their preventers when they actually need a reliever. So most people with asthma, do you carry a reliever with you everywhere you go? Yeah. Most people have got several that they stash around the place so they can have that instant hit. So the Ventolin, the blue one, is the one that we use in first aid because it's the one that's most universally tolerated and it works fast. So when you're playing sport, you can actually have a dose of the reliever 15 minutes before you start playing, and that can help reduce the risk of exercise-induced asthma. So as it says there, it works in about 4 minutes, and I'll teach you the first aid protocol. So the preventers usually come in those sort of autumn colour packaging. Some of them are purple, but if someone's pulling out one of those and hoping to get relief from one of those, it's not going to do them much good. And there's a whole range of devices that you'll see people with. Some are round, some a powder, some are liquid droplets that you inhale. But the main one for asthma first aid is the blue-grey Ventolin. Have you come across spacers? Do you use spacers?
My daughter does.
Yeah. So this is what a spacer looks like. This is one of the most common ones that you'll get in a chemist, but you can also get these cardboard disposable ones. You can get them in packs of however many, which are usually really good to stick in the team's bag of gear, just to have them on hand. So the thing about the spacer is it allows the medication to mist so that you can breathe more of it in deeper into your lungs. Without a spacer, it hits the back of your throat and slides down into your stomach where it does absolutely no good at all. So you'll get 80 to 90% more medication into your lungs if you use a spacer. So if someone's having a flare-up and it's an emergency situation and you need to get medication into them, you need one of these. You're going to get a much better hit of medication going further into the lungs where it's needed. And I've got a little diagram that shows you that. So the medication is blue, and you can see that without a spacer it hangs around the mouth and nose, and you get a little bit maybe to the top of the lungs, but most of it's already gone into your stomach. Whereas with the spacer, it fills up all the way through the lungs. So one of these is essential. And using a spacer means that you'll use less medication to feel better. And if you use less medication, you'll save money. You'll get more puffs out of your puffer using one of these, and you'll get a better result. I know a man in his late 40s, early 50s, he's had asthma all his life, and until he met me, he'd never used a spacer. And I convinced him to give it a try, and it's changed his life. He feels so much better. He's going through way less medication, and he says he feels so much more confident in being a person with asthma that he can control it better just by having used a spacer. So they're worth the investment. These ones you can wash and use again. For a club situation, the disposable ones are a good idea. So for most people with asthma, sport's a trigger, and especially here in Tassie where those winter sports get going, that cold air can be a real trigger for asthma. So what we advise is that as soon as your asthma symptoms appear, if you're playing sport, that you take your reliever. So it might be a couple of puffs, it might be up to 4. Usually the person sort of knows what they're doing, be guided by then. But you really need to wait until the breathing normalises again before you go back to playing sport. And if it happens again, you need to take your medication so that you get past that asthma flare-up but not go back to sport. Two flare-ups and you're out for the day. So we call it the 2 strikes and you're out rule, because the third one might be worse. You don't want to just keep having flare-ups and keep taking medication and playing sport and doing the thing that's causing it in the first place. So symptoms can still happen up to about half an hour after exercise. So once someone's come off, it's worth keeping just an eye on them to make sure that they're okay. So here are some of the things that we recommend for people with asthma that are playing sport. Is obviously warming up and cooling down, get the body ready, get the body breathing and heart rate up, and generally keeping as fit as possible helps people with asthma stay on top of their symptoms. It improves the lung function that might prevent an exercise-induced attack. And also, it's not always easily done when you're playing outdoors, but avoiding the triggers like pollens, grasses or airborne particles. That's not always easy if you're playing out on the oval, but sometimes it can be possible to wear a mask. We try to get people to breathe through their nose as much as possible because that's got all the nice filtering hairs and mucus that can take the particles out. And in colder weather, you can pull your shirt up or wear a scarf that goes over your face to help keep asthma symptoms at bay, help keep that air that you're breathing in just a little bit warmer. So a lot of people confuse asthma and breathlessness. So breathlessness will stop once you've normalised and your heart rate's come down and you've been out of puff a bit and you'll feel a bit better. Asthma won't just stop, it'll keep hanging around. So what we suggest for people with asthma is that you do exercise in short bursts and have a little bit of recovery time in the middle, just to see whether it is asthma or actually breathlessness. And breathlessness is a precursor to asthma, so if someone's having frequent breathlessness and it's not going away, they need to see their doctor. So, I mean, you're obviously puffing and panting and having exhibiting those behaviours when you're playing sport, but if it doesn't go away, there's something else going on. So people describe their breathlessness as it feels like muscle work rather than chest tightness, and breathlessness is a whole other mysterious thing. So the main thing to note is that if the breathlessness doesn't go away, someone needs to go and see their doctor. Or talk to one of our asthma educators and find out more about it. So like I said before, you can use your reliever 15 minutes before you play sport. So if you've got someone in your team that you know has got asthma and you know that they will often flare up, get them to have a puff on their reliever 15 minutes before. People with asthma should have an asthma action plan. Do you guys have an asthma action plan? Yeah, and regularly review it with your doctor. That's great. Yeah, that's great. It's the number one thing people with asthma can do, and I'd love it if clubs kept copies of people's asthma action plans. It would be wonderful for club staff to know what to do for that particular person, because everyone's different and people are on different medications. But that's not a legal thing, but it's a nice to have if you can swing it. If you're having asthma more than twice a month, that means that there's need for a review with your doctor if people are having asthma flare-ups more than twice a month. So that's what an asthma action plan looks like. It tells what to do when your asthma is controlled, when you're having a flare-up, and what to do in an emergency. And it will list the medication, how many puffs, how long to wait. Does anyone have any questions about asthma in general before we move on to the asthma first aid part? Nope. Okay. So if someone's out in the field and they're having an asthma flare-up, best thing you can do is try and bring them indoors away from whatever that trigger might be outside. So it might be the grass or the pollen or something in the air. Bring them inside and sit them up. Don't lay them down. We want to sit them up. And that helps keep everything nice and drained. Let gravity do its work with all that mucus. If they've got an action plan, you can follow it. If they don't have an action plan, you start asthma first aid, and it's really quite simple to do. If you're feeling that you need an ambulance, just call the ambulance. Don't worry about, I shouldn't call the ambulances, they're so busy. if someone's really struggling and you're needing to do asthma first aid, there's no problem at all to call the ambulance and get them along, because it could make all the difference. So as I said, you sit the person upright, let gravity do its work and be obviously calm and reassuring. Now the thing to remember is if someone's Ventolin is in the club room, in their bag, in a locker, you can't leave the person with asthma and go running off to get it. You need to send someone to get it. You need to have someone sitting with the person with asthma, just in case things turn south. And also, you need to be there to be reassuring, because if they're having a severe attack, they'll be panicking, and they need lots of reassurance. So the protocol is that you shake the puffer, you put one puff, so they've got it in their mouth, one puff, and then 4 breaths. 4 breaths. So that's the 4 breaths. So it's shake, puff, 4 breaths, then you wait 4 minutes. If there's no more improvement, you do that all again. Shake, puff, 4 breaths. And if there's still no improvement after 2 cycles, you can call an ambulance. You can keep doing that. 1 puff, 4 breaths, wait 4 minutes. You can just keep doing that over and over until the ambulance comes. The worst that will happen is that someone might get a bit of a racing heart from the medication, but in these circumstances, it's not going to be a bad thing to be sucking on your Ventolin, waiting for the ambulance. It's the best thing to do. If the Ventolin's out of date, you can still use it. It's better than nothing. So that's the first aid protocol. Any questions about that? No? So 1 puff, 4 breaths. So when to call an ambulance? So when the flare-up's getting a bit, you'll know when it's getting out of control. It's when the person's not responding, things are going from bad to worse. They're getting really agitated, starting to panic. Call an ambulance. Call the ambulance sooner rather than later. And if they're not improving with asthma first aid, definitely call an ambulance. And if you haven't got a blue, so if someone's having an asthma flare-up and there's no reliever, call the ambulance, because they'll have one. They've got an alternative range of treatments, and they've also got the oxygen to put in. So that's my little presentation for today. If you've got any questions, all of our services are free. You can call our asthma educators anytime or call me and I'll help you with any of your questions. We've got videos, brochures, pamphlets, posters, all sorts of things that you can look at. If you need anything, I can get them printed for you if you want something for your club room. And people can sign up to our email newsletter, which gives you lots of free updates, and you might be interested in that. So our website's just got a whole treasure trove of information for you. But today, for each of you, I've got an asthma emergency kit for your club room, and that's got 2 of these and 2 of the little face masks that fit on the end for children under 5, just in case. It's got a log sheet where you can write down what asthma incident occurred, just in case you need it for your reporting. And it's also got the first aid protocol written down there for you, just in case you forget, because it takes a little while to remember. But that's all I have to say today about asthma and sport. I hope it's useful, and I hope you can support people in your clubs that have got asthma so that they can keep playing sport, because being active and getting out and being social is so important. So thanks for your time.